Hey folks, let's look at a problem that may trip you up. This is about partial parsing and volatile variables. So this is the issue here. If you have code that looks like this, essentially you want to have dbt update some sort of like value based on a timestamp kind of thing, and you notice that it is not. That is because of partial parsing and the ability to not, well, the inability to handle volatile variables. So let's look at a quick example here. Here I've got a source and I've got some sort of E here that uses a volatile variable kind of pattern here. I'm getting the current timestamp and then I'm going to just format it, right? So the last few bits here is the timestamp. And then I have a run operation that's going to print out some sort of fake SQL query. We are not running any single queries here. I'm just going to do a printout just to show you what that is. Okay, so now here you can see here I've already kind of ran this run operation a couple times, so they are all different timestamps, right? So for example, I just ran this, and we can see that this says that the time is 22, 25, 36. This was run, you can see here this was like a couple minutes ago, and this still says 22, 25, 36. This says 22, 25, 36, 22, 25, 36, right? Because you can see here, the current time when I'm running this command has changed, right? But all of this has not changed. And that is the partial parsing function of dbt. dbt does not reparse this value here if nothing has changed, right? And so that can kind of trip you up. So I'll show you this thing. If I delete this target folder, what happens here is dbt will reparse. That thing kind of did it. And then now when I run this, then we can see that this has moved forward, right? 23:05:14, which is kind of close to this current time. Okay, however, again, if we keep doing this, you'll find that it's kind of stuck. 23:05:14, and that's because obviously partial parsing is at play. So what can we do about this? We can do a no partial parse. And if you do something like this will trigger dbt to fully parse every time. So you can see now this is going to be always up to date. 23:05:48. 23:06:00, and so on, right? So there's other things that would cause your project to fully parse. For example, if you change your dbt version or you change your vars and so on. This is not an exhaustive video, so you're going to have to experiment a little bit. But essentially, the idea is if you see this thing being stuck, that's because of partial parsing. And this happens in a run as well, right? So I'll show you what happens in a run. So if you look at this, for example, I've got two runs here. Now, this run started at 22:30, 23:51, and this is 22:23:51, which is all well and good. This one is the same thing. It says 20. This one says 22:24:32, and this is aligned, right? So this is kind of what you want to look out for, right? So this line tells me that dbt has fully parsed the project because a safe manifest is not found, and that's because obviously dbt is fully parsing every time I'm doing a job run. Some folks actually have got this turned on. So I'll show you what happens if we have this turned on, right? So I'm going to turn this on, which is essentially partially parse things between runs, right? So previously it was off and now I just turned it on. So let's see what happens now. I'm going to run this again and let's see. So we know that, from one run to the next, the timestamp of the SQL statement should be updated. However, when I have partial parsing turned on, we can see what happens here. Sometimes takes a while, and there we go, right? So now this first run says unable to partial parse, which we know means that this is fully parsed, and so we get the right timestamp here aligned to the current time. And if we run it again, now this run should be taking the partial parse information from the previous run, this one, right? And therefore the timestamp that's going to output in the SQL command is going to be whatever's in this. Let's have a look. Okay, So now with this one, we don't see that line anymore, right? We don't see that line that says unable to partial parse, which means it has partial parse, and it kind of took this value from the previous run. If you look at the previous run, which is this one, you can see the value was what? 230738. Now, what happens if if we kind of keep running this over and over again? It's essentially going to be stuck at 230738. You can see it happen again here, just to demonstrate. This is done. Okay. And you can see, so, the time has moved on now. We are 230858, but this is essentially stuck to 230738, right? Now, as I was saying before, previously, certain things will cause the project to fully parse, even with the partial parse configuration here. And let's try and see what happens. So if I change my DBT version, for example, let's change from versionless to, go back and forth, like perhaps somebody is going from 1.7 to versionless and so on. Now I'm going to redo my job. And here, what will happen, obviously, in the first run, like I was saying, this is going to be a full parse, and therefore the timestamp of the SQL command is going to increment. It's going to be up to date with the current time. And we can have a look at that. Cool. So this would have been kind of fully parsed, and this is up to date, right? 230953. If we download the debug logs, which you kind of want to do all the time to see the exact commands, you can see this thing says failed to load parse file. And so what happened here is that this is going to do a full parse because it could not partially parse, and therefore we get a new timestamp. However, as you know, now that we have kind of locked in the value over here, then the next run is going to basically take the value from this other one, which is 230953. If we go here, let's wait for this to run. There you go, 230953, even though our timestamp has moved forward to 231046, right? So if you have something like this and you kind of want to keep this partial parse flag on, obviously you can turn it off for things to fully parse every time. But if you have, what you can do essentially is, as I did before, do a no partial parse. And so if you add a flag like this, then what will happen here, regardless of version, if your version stays the same or whatever, DBT is going to do a full parse every time. And therefore, the timestamp is going to increment every time, which is most probably what we want, right? Because we don't want it to be sticking. And that's essentially this problem over here. And now you know exactly why that happened, right? So let's see, hopefully this has incremented. There you go. So now this is up to date, 231144. If we run it again, so you can see this one says no partial parse now, which means it's a full parse. And this one is 231212, which is up to date again, right? So if you put a no partial parse, it means DBT will fully parse it every time. This is probably what we want. If you look at the IDE, if you notice that in the IDE, partial parsing is just turned on. You can't really disable it. So you are going to kind of run into this, and you kind of probably want to add this no partial parsing if you are running into a scenario that's like this. Thank you.